Hi folks, welcome back. Episode number 8. Gonna cut dovetails. So without any ado, let's get started. I'm going to grab a block of wood to pound on. Now I would normally do this what I would normally do would be I would do every procedure X number of times. But I want to get a chance to teach this to you a little more thoroughly, so I'm going to complete one corner. Then I'm going to do the next corner, so it will be a little bit of doubling up, and that may not be efficient from a time perspective, but I think it'll give me a chance to do it twice, and I may think of something else, or I may forget something the first time around to tell you. Anyway, you'll get the picture. All right, here we go. Last time we cut these, and I was just having a look at these. By the way, these are not safe. Someone asked me the other day, why do you wear safety glasses when you're cutting dovetails? It's not that they're safety glasses, they have little magnifiers in there. I get them at Woodcraft, and these are number 2, so that's why I got these on. But, frick, if you'll notice in here, I didn't get these cut right to the line like I should have. So I'm going to come in, and I'm going to see if I can just cut those a little bit deeper. It's going to make the chiseling easier. I might not be able to just because this piece is so short. Risk of ruining it either. This northern white pine is so fragile. You just have to be extra careful when you use it. But that's a good thing. Teaches you to be particularly careful with your tools. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and label the waist. Jake, grab me a red pen, would you please? I don't know where I left it. Now, I'm going to do something different here that I didn't do in my advanced hand cut dovetail video. So, if you watch that one, you'll notice that wasn't there. Thank you. Identify my waist. I'm going to put this back in the vise for a second. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use a felt tip marker. When I'm chopping, I want to know how far to go. What I'm going to do is set that. So there's my baseline. Are you in close enough to see that? There's my baseline I made with the marking gauge. I'm going to set the chisel just to that depth. I'm going to put a mark on the back. It will become my gauge line when I'm chopping. Now all I have to do is just watch the gauge line and I don't have to worry about it. Okay. Got a backup block, mallet. Now I just like to spread my legs so that I can drop my height and keep my back nice and straight. I always chop this way so that I can see plumb. I don't want to, if I'm chopping this way, I can't tell. This way I can easily see it. First thing we have to be careful of is as we start to chop, the fibers are going to break out ahead of the chisel. I'll show you what I mean. I'm in here just, 30 seconds. The fibers break out ahead of the chisel. So if I go full depth right now, I'm going to end up with material broken out down below that line. I don't want that. So what I'm going to do, when I first start, I'll turn this around so you can see it. I'm going to go about that deep. Actually, Frick, what I want you to do is come over to my other side. They're going to get a better view from over here. And then I'll move along the line. Again, only going about 2/3 of the depth. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm just taking very small bites. They're very manageable. You try to take it off in too big of a chunk, your chisel gets jammed. You have to hit the chisel that much harder. You just lose a lot of that control. So I'm just taking small bites. It's real easy. And now that I'm in there about 1/3 of the way, I'm going to start going down a little bit deeper so that by the time I get to that baseline, I'll be right down full depth. I can get there sooner actually. Okay. Now, I'm 30 seconds or so away from the line. That means there's very little wood on the waist side that's going to put pressure on the bevel and try to shove it past the scribe line. So now that I've done that, I'll set the chisel in the scribe line and go down, hold the chisel plumb, and go down full depth. Okay, and that fiber just, even if it's in hardwood, it just disintegrates, so it makes it real easy to get rid of. Doesn't take a long time, so let's do this next one. Come in about a 30-second, go down 2/3 of the depth, and then start working my way in, just small bites, maybe at the most a 1/16, but it's probably again closer to 30 seconds of an inch. Makes it much easier to chop. You don't have to beat the thing so hard. Now, you want to make sure there isn't any debris between your workpiece and your backup block, or you'll end up with dents in there that are a lot of extra work to try to get rid of. Alright, I'm down to this baseline. Frick, I'd rather you were over on this side. Now, sit it right in the scribe line. Is there a reason why you prefer to be on the left side? Are you able to get a better angle or what?
We could see it going through a little better. Your arm gets in the way.
Okay, well tell me and I'll move. Alright, so viewing from this side, I'm going to come in here about 30-second, go down about 2/3 the depth. I always use my, I don't always, but I usually use my right hand to hold the piece in place, use my thumb to help guide the chisel in so I can drop it where I want it. And then, as I mentioned, once you're in this way, 1/3 of the depth, you can then start driving the chisel down harder until you get to that full depth as measured by the gauge line on the back of the chisel. And to remove that, you can either use a bit of lacquer thinner, or the next time you sharpen your chisel and hone the back side, it'll come off. Full depth. Really important that you go full depth. If not, it's a real pain. Alright, now I would normally go ahead and do this side. We haven't sawn those yet, so I'm going to repeat this procedure from start to finish as I mentioned. So let's go ahead and put this in the vise, and I'll walk you through what we would do next. So Frick, you're going to want to come over now on the other side. I'm going to introduce a different chisel. Okay, first of all, let's see how easy these fibers are to get rid of. You can literally just pick them away with your fingernail. Because we took little small bites, it just doesn't take much to get rid of it. First thing I want to do is I'm going to turn my lamp on. Hopefully that won't mess up your filming. Okay, I want to get rid of the bulk of the material, and I want to get right to that scribe line. It's important that before I set the chisel in the scribe line, I remove as much of this waste as possible. I don't want to risk blowing that end lap off. In fact, sometimes you may actually want to have a backup block in here, which would be another piece of wood that you would come in, put the two together, and then clamp those in the vise. Now there's a little bit of support offered. Oftentimes what you'll find when you do that is you need to come in here with a clamp to hold it, but that looks to be pretty good. Okay, now here's how, back up a little bit so we can see this. Here's how I hold the chisel. My thumb resting on top, and then I can lean over it and I can just pare down with lots of power. So I'm going to carefully place that, and because I chopped full depth down in here at the baseline, I go here, I start here and I fall into a void, which makes it very easy. If I didn't do that, what would happen is you'd be having a whole bunch of material built up down in that corner, and it's just a real pain to get rid of. Okay, now I need to expose the saw kerf on the side. You'll see it better when I come over to this on this one. But at no time can I ever touch the perimeter of this socket. If I do, damage is going to show all the way through. So I'm just going to carefully take this material out of the way, and if anything I'll just pull back, but never pry. Now I can't go right into that corner yet until I get rid of the material that would otherwise force my chisel. See, if I tried to put that right in the corner, the amount of material that's sitting on this side would cause the chisel to twist, and I'd end up breaching that line. I don't want that to happen. So come over here. Mind you, this is pine, so it's really very easy to chisel. However, even on hardwoods, if you just are patient and take a lots of small bites. It's easy to do. I'm going to come in here, take a little more waste. Okay, so you can see how little material's there right now. Can you see that? You picking that line up really well? Good. Okay. Now in the middle, I'll set the chisel right in the scribe line. Hold it plumb. Go straight down. And then using that as a reference, just kind of walk it forward and the other way. But this is where I'm not going right into the corner yet, because I've got to get rid of that material. This stuff right here, pointed out, this stuff is preventing me from going right into the corners. I've got to get rid of that first. Okay, now here's the chisel I'm going to show you. What I did is I just took a regular bevel edge chisel. I ground it myself. I made sure that the sides are very sharp, and there's a fairly steep slope here. This is only used for paring. I never pound on it, so I only need to sharpen this thing once every year, if that often. But it's sharp on the side, and I'll show you why. What I want to do is I want to be able to get into the corners. If I had a skew chisel, skew chisels being skewed on the end cause me to have a left and a right, but they also throw off, and if you get more of a plan view, pull back a little bit. They also cause my line of force to be off, because the skew angle means I'm pushing this way. I found that very inconvenient to use, so my one chisel will allow me to do both corners, and it keeps my line of force straight on, so much easier to work. Okay, so first thing I want to do is undercut these fibers on the side, and that's why I have the chisel sharpened on the side. And then I'll do the same thing over here. Get right into the corner. Careful not to push off that end lap if you didn't have support here. Now with the chisel very sharp, okay, back up just a little bit, let me in here. Okay, I'm going to highlight this with a pen. That's the kerf left from the dovetail saw. And what I'm going to do now is come in here with a sharp chisel, and I'm going to continue that kerf right into the corner. Now, you got to be careful. You don't want to pull out fibers, especially on this soft wood. So this may be a two-pronged approach, coming in from the side and then coming down from the top. I'm going to make sure that I've cut right into that corner. Now I'll come in here, reference off of the kerf, and then just continue like so. Now, I want you to pick up on something. Come over here so you can see this. Because we severed the fibers down the bottom, you see what happens? These just break away. If you didn't do that, all that material gets stuck and just simply gets bent over, and it makes it very hard to get into the corner. Severing along the bottom first, do that controlled tear by paring along like this. The fibers just simply break away, and you can pull them out of there with the chisel pretty easily. Now I'll come in from the top, and what I'm left with is a nice clean corner. Now I want to make sure that there's no ridge line left where the saw kerf stopped and the paring began. If there was, that means that when I put the joint together, it's going to be wider here than it is at the bottom, and it's going to cause the pins to spread. And in some cases you may get a split, or this is going to get pushed off to the side and you're not going to have a very good fit. So I've got to make sure. I can do it with the lamp sometimes to see if there's any ridge there, or I can come in with a chisel and see if I can feel one. And I can feel it right there. So I've got to come in here, just make sure that I get all of that material off of there. Okay, that should be good. Now we'll do this side. You may want to switch sides and come over on my right shoulder. Again, for clarity, I'll come in here and identify. There's the kerf. Come in with your chisel. You got to be able to feel where you're touching, because it would be easy to accidentally cut the kerf, and I don't want to cut the kerf. Coming down from the top. Make sure that I'm clear right into the corner. Set my chisel in there. Clean that up. Never pry. I may have to say that 100 times, but never pry against that perimeter. Alright, now I'm going to make sure that there's no, can't see it with the lamp, so I'm going to feel with the chisel. Okay, don't think there's any ridge there, so we're good on that one. Okay, now we'll go ahead and do these other ones. You want to go back over on the left side. Now I'll go ahead and finish these next two as if I was doing it without teaching, which means I would just go in and I would do each procedure however many times I need to before I would move on to the next one. So come in, expose kerf, careful not to pry. Just going to pull that fiber back out of the way. Get as close to that back line as I can before I finally set the chisel in. Somebody asked me just recently about the differences in the pines. I've worked several different varieties. This is northern white pine or eastern pine. And this is my favorite. It's just a real beautiful wood to work. It cuts like a dream. It ages extremely well. Relatively expensive, however. You do have to have extremely sharp tools when you work it, and you got to be very careful. Dent or bruise very easily. In here, undercut the fibers on the side, force it right into the corner. Careful not to push too hard if you don't have a backup block in there. Do both sides. Okay, now get the lamp just right to highlight it. I'm going to set the chisel. Actually, I can get a little more material out of here. Set the chisel on the kerf and then continue by paring right into the corner. Okay, I'll do this one next. If you tip the chisel, I'll show you that technique on the next one. The hard part here is trying to find, wow, look at that. I hope that didn't break out below the guides line. See that little bit? Hopefully it'll be alright. Okay, if I tip the chisel down a little bit so that I can kind of pick up right at the bottom of that pin. It makes it a little bit easier to tell when the chisel is actually riding on that saw kerf. And if anything, that's the one slightly hard part to do with this. Alright, now come back over here. Set the chisel right, I'm going to take a little more. Set the chisel right in the scribe line. Pare straight down. Get as close into the corner as I dare. I just pointed out because when I pared right down the scribe line, it disappeared. Alright, now I'll get these corners done. As soon as you get enough clearance, you can go in and finish that paring cut to get that corner nice and sharp. Okay, change the lamp. That's the other nice thing about being efficient with this is you're only having to move your lamp once. You have to have a real light touch of this too, especially on this wood. there. Tempted to resharpen this chisel, but I think it's good enough that we can get this done. Alright, double check and make sure there aren't any ridges left on there. I certainly hope you understand what I'm talking about, because that's critical. So many times I teach guys how to do this and they put the joint together and the gap doesn't close and they don't understand why, but you've got to go through and do those. Be very careful when you do those. Okay, now I want to make sure that that back wall has to be perpendicular. There's two ways I can do it. I can use a marking gauge, which actually might be an even better way to teach you. So take my marking gauge, set it right there, lock it, and then just go in and make sure, careful you don't bruise these corners. That end wall has to be plumb, and a lot of times what happens is you're going in there and paring and you end up leaving it so that it actually slopes this way. You put your joint together and as you pound it, it starts to spread and you have a gap along there and you can't figure out why. Well, you've got to go in. Normally what I would do is come in here with a chisel or something and push along the bottom. Now frick, if you'll stand right over there and sight this. You want to make sure that when you're looking at this, it's either plumb or slightly undercut. If it slopes toward this side at all, then you're going to have that problem I just mentioned. Now, a lot of times there's just a little bit of material that got left behind. And I'm just going to go in there, and if I have to do this, I step just inside the joint, or just inside that back wall a very little bit before I pare straight down, or slightly undercut. Even though this is long grain that I'm working on, the mating piece from the tailboard is end grain, so you're not losing or sacrificing any effective glue surface in doing that, but what you are doing is making sure that your joint seats properly. Okay, nice clean socket. Don't have a look at that, a real close look. Right? Nice sharp corners, no debris in the way. If we did what we should have done, that'll fit beautifully. Okay, now I'm going to go over and do the other side. Now, I'm going to start over. We're going to cut these, and we'll repeat that process. I'll go a little bit quicker, since you've already seen it once. I just got to get my little level. Where did I put that? I want to make sure this piece is standing plumb. This is all about training yourself to make vertical cuts by feel. So anytime I put a piece in the vise, always make sure that it's standing plumb. Okay, lock that in. Now, position my lamp so that it highlights that scribe mark. Sometimes you got to play around with it a little bit to get it to do that. And all we can do is saw from this scribe line down to that scribe line. Can't go any further. Don't want to see cuts running down below. Use my, where's the best spot for you? You see right here?
Yep.
Alright. Use my little teeth to get started. Now line the saw up first. I've got an anchor point with my thumb and with my index finger. And as I get into position, I'm always pressing laterally against those fingers. Line the saw up. Start on the back side. Okay, so we saw a cut from here down to there. It could be a little bit lower on this side. That's what I did the other day. Fortunately, this stuff is nice and easy to cut. Alright, let's get a better look at this next one. Line up the saw. This pine sawdust can be a little bit sticky because of the high resin content. sounds like a windstorm. It's just me constantly blowing the sawdust out of the way. Okay, let's reposition the lamp. Okay, I want you to see if you can come over my left shoulder. Now this one's a little bit tougher, as I mentioned before, because I can't have support right here where I want it. I've got to move my thumb back so that I can see. So I'm compensating by pressing a little bit harder with the dovetail saw. So I have a little more control over where that starts. Lift it off and make sure that my kerf is in the right spot. Very light touch. The other thing that complicates this is you're working with such a short piece. If this was up another couple of inches, it would be a heck of a lot easier, but we don't have that luxury with this candle box. Okay, one more. I'll often make that little cut, move the saw, blow it away. Come in here, Frick. Look right down over here. Make the cut, move the saw away, and make sure that my kerf is exactly where I want it. And if it isn't, then I've got to compensate by moving the saw over a little bit more, but I can do that with this particular saw. Okay, good to go. Okay, same mark, same dimensions. Go ahead and chop this out a little bit faster. Now I'm not going to talk you through this one. I'm just going to go at it and we'll see how fast we can get it done. And I'm not going for a speed record. I just want you to get some idea of what you should be able to aim for as far as time to do it. I'd get Jake to sing while we're doing this, but you wouldn't want that. Right, Jake?
Right.
We're down to full depth. Small chunks make it easier. Afford me lots of control. I know I said I wasn't going to talk, but I can't stop. Alright, we're right on the baseline. A little too much material there. Next one, in about a 30-second. Go 2/3 of the way. Now I could take larger chunks this being time, but you get into a piece of maple, or oak, or walnut, or cherry and start doing that, the chisel gets stuck on you and it's just more hassle than what it's worth. You think you're saving time by getting it done faster, but the amount of frustration you deal with probably ends up taking you longer. Remember, 2/3 first, and then once you're in a third of the way this way, you can then start working towards going full depth with the chisel. How are we for time, guys?
1 minute.
Okay, see if we can get this one done. Full depth. I don't mind taking a little extra time on this because this is critical. You've got to know how to cut half blinds. It's the most popular joint you're going to do. Alright, let's set this, well, we're at a time. Alright, when we come back, we'll go ahead and we'll get this, we'll finish that half blind. And then I think the next thing we've got to do is we've got to cut this piece down to fit. We'll go ahead and lay it out and get those half blinds cut. I don't know if we'll get to the cutting the groove on the next episode, or maybe episode number 9, but we're getting there. Alright, so we'll see you back here for episode number 9. Have a good day.